Have you ever met someone so convinced they were right that they refuse to learn, listen, or grow, only to watch them struggle in business and relationships? What if I told you that the key to a greater intelligence and emotional mastery isn't just IQ or EQ, but your humility quotient, HQ? But here's the real kicker. There's actually a powerful principle on this straight from the scripture. And I'll reveal the exact verse at the end that gives us a practical framework for mastering humility and unlocking wisdom. All right, I want to dive in first to the three biggest mistakes we make when we lack humility. But I don't want to just leave you hanging and helpless. I'm also going to give you the reason why, when we improve our humility quotient, it can drastically improve our emotional quotient and our intelligence quotient. All right, let's dive right into the three big mistakes, guys. Okay, the first big mistake that we can make when we lack humility, right, that will hurt our learning, relationships, and business outcomes is when we resist feedback and correction. Now, the worst thing a person can do is to reject feedback. You know, I always say that feedback is the breakfast of champions, right? You have to understand that pride is never a healthy thing. It is simply not. And it's not just coming from the biblical principle, right? This is for our non believers as well. It's simply not practical, right? Pride blinds us to our flaws, stalling personal and professional growth. It will not allow us to excel in whatever endeavor we attempt to get into concerning business or even personal relationships, right? Because in business, we need people and we have to learn how to establish productive personal relationships in order for that business to thrive. People need to feel like you understand them, like they can trust you, right, with their fears and their concerns, and that you can understand their side of things so you can come up with effective solutions that benefit all parties involved, right? So you don't want to resist feedback or correction because if you remain rigid instead of being flexible, it is just going to hold up progress and you won't be able to get over that hump that is holding you back. You're literally becoming the exact bottleneck in your own business and processes. And it's going to only hurt everyone that is involved. And you don't want that. The best thing that you can do is to remain humble and flexible, and that will allow you to pivot much more quickly and to get over those humps through the proper iterations so you ultimately can achieve the outcomes that you desire. Now, as I always say, while we can't control the outcomes, we absolutely control the inputs. So be more humble, guys, in that case. All right. The second big mistake that we can make when we lack humility is we damage relationships, right? Arrogance repels people while humility fosters trust and collaboration. As I said earlier, if you're dealing with a person in a relationship, say it is a friend or your child, a parent or a loved one, meaning a significant other, or just even someone in your neighborhood or a coworker, you have to be willing to humble yourself enough to listen and hear them out. If you're so bent on getting your point across and getting what you want out of a situation, it's simply going to be off-putting, right? It's going to make people not really want to warm up to you. And they'll usually have their defenses up most of the time or simply have a wall up altogether when it comes to dealing with you. And they may associate you with like an energy draining, sucking vampire, right? And you don't want that. You want to be a source of inspiration. You want to be not someone that acts as a confirmation, echo chamber, right? You don't want to be that for a person. You don't want to enable them in a way that is not empowering to them. But at the same time, Even if you challenge them, if they know them from a genuine place of empathy and concern and love, they will be more open and honest with you because they feel they can trust you, right? And if you literally humble yourself enough to listen, you may very well be able to help them reach better solutions far more quickly, right? It just simply works, guys, right? And think about that time in your past when you were rigid in a situation. It could have been with a friend or a family member or a coworker or a significant other, and that you just softened for whatever reason. You saw yourself catching a glimpse of their side of things, and it softened you up a little bit because you were able to relate it back to a time where you were having a similar frustration, right? And then you softened up, and then you went back to the situation, you humbled yourself, and things actually got better. And then you wind up laughing or crying together or whatever. That was simply a better outcome. And you'll know that I'm right when I say this. So you want to avoid mistake number 2. Now, here's mistake number 3. And as I say, guys, if you ignore this mistake, it still can mess up the other 2 situations, because even when we're dealing with business, like I said, you need people. And if you don't understand this when it comes to business, right, you won't really get it right when it comes to using the other 2 points, right? We want the whole picture, right? Never part of it, right? Because remember, the truth is when you can see the beginning, the middle, and the end. All right, let's dive right into mistake number 3. We make poor business decisions. Now, the reason why mistake number 3 is so important, as I was saying, is that if you have the first 2 down in terms of avoiding those mistakes, but you're still allowing yourself to not learn from those instances in order to make better decisions, it will absolutely be self-sabotage on your part, right? Because overconfidence leads to costly mistakes, while humility keeps us adaptable and open to better strategies, right? It's not just enough to, take the feedback and allow someone to correct you, right? Or to be more humble and empathetic, right? In those relationships with the people that you're doing business with or members of your team. If you don't take what you've learned in order to apply it, to take action on it, it's all in vain, right? So we want to absolutely be making better decisions because we absolutely are open to the feedback and correction. We're open to the information and what we've gleaned from the other side, right? Because we know in business, empathy is like the core driver. Why? Because when we're approaching the marketplace, we have to approach it from their perspective and what matters to them. And we have to be very driven and passionate about solving their problems and giving them the best outcomes that they desire, right? And we benefit as a result because we feel more fulfilled because we're contributing in a way that adds value to their lives, right? So we want to be doing that. So let's make better decisions when we get this information, right? When we get the correction, when we hear their side, we have to apply it in a way that works. Because if we take all of the information that we received and we apply it in a way that doesn't work, we won't get anywhere and it'll stagnate us. So I hope that was helpful. But let's not stay in doom and gloom. Oh, and remember, I have a Bible verse at the end of the video that I'm going to share that will give you a practical framework for moving forward using humility. And that's for our believers or non-believers. All right, so here's the juicy stuff, guys. Here where it gets good. How your humility quotient can drastically improve your emotional and intelligence quotients, right? Boom. Let's start with number 1. Point number 1. It can boost your emotional quotient by increasing your self-awareness. Humility helps you recognize emotional triggers and manage responses effectively. You have to understand and be more aware of what triggers you and what triggers other people. That's why I say empathy is amazing. And in order for us to really get a really good grasp on how effective we can be in being more empathetic, humility, it takes humility to allow for that process to take place, right? So the self-awareness, being aware of what triggers you and what triggers other people, will allow you to use Proverbs 15:1, I believe, when it says, "A soft answer turneth away wrath, while grievous words stir up anger," right? You don't want to stir up contention in a situation because you've become triggered or because you weren't aware enough, right? Self-aware enough to see how you're not observing what triggers them, right? Because self-awareness is key, because it not only allows you to catch things that can trip you up, it allows you to be aware of how observant you are, right? How well you're listening to what may trip them up. It allows you to ask better questions, right? When you catch yourself wanting to get your point and you're like more self-aware, you say like, hold up, wait a minute. I'm moving a little bit too fast. I'm taking things a little bit too personal. Let me calm down and hear them out so I can ask them the proper questions so I can see it from their side, right? And that's what we want to do. We want to make sure that we are being more empathetic to them. All right. So, guess what? Another thing that it does, it enhances the IQ by keeping you in a learning mindset. A humble mind is always open to new information, fostering continuous improvement. And I'm telling you guys, humility is so awesome because when you are a more humble person, right? And you're very curious, right? Because that's what it does. It fuels your curiosity because you realize that the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know, right? That there is some more to learn, right? There's an opportunity for growth there, right? So humility is very, very much needed for this process, right? A growth mindset does not work, right? Or you absolutely won't have a growth mindset if you lack humility, because it is the pride that keeps us rigid, right? That keeps us in that narrow-minded space. And we don't want that. That's why I say this. I respect everybody's right. If you're a racist person, you have a right to be racist, right? I don't believe in silence and racists or people we disagree with. But I can honestly tell you the shortcomings of being a racist person is that you cut yourself off from the other side. And if you're caught up in the color of someone, you're literally shutting yourself down from that empathy, because we're dealing with humans, by the way. There's only one race, the human race, right? And race itself is a man-made construct anyway. But I'm telling you, when you're open and willing to learn from your mistakes and learn from the perspectives of others, right? I'm telling you, you'll get more things right. All right. The next strength of being a more humble person is that it strengthens your EQ, emotional quotient, by improving empathy and communication. Humility allows you to listen actively, understand others, and build stronger relationships. And I can't reiterate this enough. Being humble allows us to take that pause, breathe, and listen. Because when we listen better, right, we learn more and we get to ask better questions. Because if you're in a situation, let's say you're in a negotiation. Now, negotiation should always be an environment where both parties benefit, right? You don't want to be a manipulative person, right? Narcissism and self-serving agendas doesn't add any value. It helps no one, and it's literally like you shooting yourself in the foot. So the better that you get at listening, right? The more you'll be able to understand someone, because they're basically going to be telling you what they want, literally telling you what they want, which will allow you to ask better questions, right? And therefore you'll be able to add a better context to things, and they can see things from your perspective and how you're literally looking out for their best interests and showing them that you can help them with the outcomes they desire. So that's very important. All right. Another thing, it improves your IQ by making you a better problem solver. Humble people ask better questions, seek input, and make more informed decisions. And that's basically what I'm talking about, the questions. I'm telling you, we will always get better answers when we ask better questions. It just simply helps. And humility is the genesis of this process, right? You cannot escape it. Why do you think God rewards the humble and punishes the prideful? Right? That's a consistent pattern throughout Scripture. And even if you aren't a believer, you have to admit the principles in the Bible are very, very practical, which is why the laws that govern us here in the U.S., right? And in most democracies are literally based on biblical principles. So we know that it's practical, right? Basically, the Bible is a guidebook for how we should live our lives in the most productive manner of being the children of the King, right? So it literally applies to human interaction, human productivity, and human contribution, right? So let's keep that in mind. Okay, also, it actually elevates the EQ by reducing ego-driven conflicts. Humility helps you focus on solutions instead of defending your pride. If we come from a place, right, when we're dealing with a situation and we may have a conflict, I'm telling you guys, I have this mnemonic device that I use to remind me of this called R&R. What do I mean by R&R? Relentless resolution. Inevitably, you're going to have a situation where you're in disagreement with someone. That's always going to happen, whether it's someone that you're close to or someone that you're not close to. So you're inevitably going to have that. But if you stay in a mindset of relentless resolution, you'll easily be able to come to a solution that benefits you both, or simply be able to amicably come to a place where you can agree to disagree in a civil manner, right? So it just simply makes sense, right? So it's better for you to focus on solution and be solution oriented. It just simply helps. And I'm telling you, for me, it's just so relaxing and freeing that I can literally love and appreciate someone, even if they have vitriol towards me. They hate me. They have contempt for me. I'm not going to return that energy, right? As a follower of Christ, which I believe is very wise, I'm not going to reward evil for evil. It just simply doesn't help us. And I believe that God is not wasting his words when he says that. He understands fundamentally how we human beings work and how we operate. And he knows that tit for tat simply doesn't serve anyone. All right. Another way that it can help us is by optimizing both our emotional quotient and our intelligence quotient by fostering adaptability. A high HQ, humility quotient, means you're willing to adjust, pivot, and develop based on new insights. Like I said, feedback is the breakfast of champions, right? We live in a data-driven society, right? And data is very important, not just for our business and our intellectual properties and our technological advancement. It actually helps us in our relationships, right? And we simply want to do that. We want to take that data, right, what we've learned, so we can ask better questions, so we can listen better, so we can reach better outcomes using that solution-based mindset, right? That relentless resolution I spoke of earlier. All right. Now, I'm going to close out by saying this, right? The smartest and most emotionally intelligent people aren't the ones who think they know everything, but the ones who remain teachable, adaptable, and self-aware. And this principle is straight from the Word of God. Here's that powerful verse I mentioned earlier. Okay, this comes from Proverbs 11:12, and this is the King James Version. You know, that's the one I prefer. When pride cometh, then cometh shame. But with the lowly is wisdom, right? So the connection is clear. Pride leads to downfall, but humility is the foundation of true wisdom. So, how high is your HQ? Drop a comment below and let's talk about it. I hope you guys have a blessed one. Until next time.